Welcome back to Inside the Huddle. I'm your host, David Igono. I'm joined by linebacker Scott Gyorko, 2001-2004, cornerback supreme Willie Edwards, 1984 to 1988, and strong side linebacker JT Thomas, 1994-1995. This week we're going to do a four-game report card evaluation of the game of the season up until now, and then we're going to talk about Kansas. Homecoming week, so it should be pretty straightforward. Let's start off with the offense. JT, we'll start with you. The offense has done a lot of good things, a lot of good things, but there's some things that are inconsistent.
I agree, and I would like to, first and foremost, let's focus on those good things. The first good thing is the fact that we've gone down in each game on that first drive and been very productive. We're running the ball. In fact, we've been very balanced. We've thought over the last couple of weeks. So that's the bonus, and that's the plus of our offense. And then we were able to see that we have a quarterback that is going to be very productive for us in the future. So those are all a positive thing. However, I think the biggest thing that's noticeable is the red zone. I think Willie mentioned that there early on in the season that we're starting to become a team that is almost afraid of being in the red zone. We'd almost rather be away, have a farther distance to go than to be playing in the red zone.
I think that goes into account that our rushing attack needs a lot of help. Russell Shell, he's averaging 4 yards a carry, but like Willie said, we don't have a 100-yard rusher this whole season. It seems like the first offensive series of the game, we're mixing up the offense a lot better than the rest of the game. We're mixing in runs and passes on a very up-tempo kind of style. And then later in the game, it seems like we become more one-dimensional when it comes to the pass.
Well, again, red zone, and I mentioned it like I said before in the beginning of the year, because we had a problem with it last year, and it seems like it's carrying over into this year. And we're going to have to find a way to score points in the red zone. You can't keep getting inside the 20-yard line and not coming away, especially against good teams, and not score points. And it showed up in the Alabama game and Oklahoma. We got in the red zone a couple of times, but I don't think it would have mattered at that point. But, going forward, we got to run the ball better. We have no 100-yard rushers. We've been doing it by committee, yes, but we've been known as a team that we've had guys who can carry the ball and be very effective with it and put pressure on the defense, and we haven't done that this year.
Yeah, I don't think we have a dominant running back. And I don't say that like the guys haven't shown up. I mean, there's been times where I think Wendell Smallwood has surprised me the most. Like, I didn't know he had that in him.
Well, I said in the beginning, he's probably our most versatile backfield player we have, because he's a guy that can line up in the slot and also catch the ball out of the backfield very well. And we don't have any other running back that can line up in the slot and run routes and do that. But then, the next play he can come back and line up in the backfield and get you 3 or 4 yards. So he's very versatile, and I knew he'd be a good player to do something like that. But it's tough when you get in that red zone and those lanes close. You can't throw the deep ball. And I think part of our problem is our quarterback is playing so well that he's throwing the ball so much, and it takes away from the run game. Mm-hmm. So, and even though JT said we were balanced, I think once we get inside the red zone, it just your playbook goes from here to here, because a lot of your plays that would go vertical down the field, they're taken out of the playbook. You got a Kevin White. I would think you get in the red zone, that's a done deal. I'm gonna throw the ball to number 11, because he's. I don't care who the cornerback is. You can be an All-American. This guy's gonna go up and make plays, and he's shown he can do that, and he's done it these past 4 games. That it's hard to match up with that guy 1-1. So in the red zone, I'm thinking 1-1 Kevin White, but we haven't seen a whole lot of it. Maybe in this next stretch after the break, we'll start doing a lot more of that.
Well, we are our own worst critics, and that's what we're trying to focus on. But our offense has been pretty well through this first 4 games. Yes. I mean, the report card on the offense, I would say, is an A minus probably, just because of the lack of rushing. But Clint Trickett, he's throwing for 1,600 yards. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what, 3rd, 4th nationally. Mm-hmm. Kevin White's got 630 plus yards, 3 touchdowns. Mario Alford's even there. Mm-hmm. Stedman Bailey's numbers are almost identical to Kevin White, and Stedman Bailey's career season, I guess record-shattering season, I should say. one more reception and 2 less yards through 4 games, and that's against 2 of the top 5 teams in the country. So Kevin White has been outstanding.
Well, what's quite interesting is the fact that everybody's touching the ball. All our receivers are touching the ball. Even our running backs in the latter part of the games are starting to get a feel for the ball. However, we certainly need more ball carriers, and we need to we getting the ball. We need to come up with a running game. I mean, we have to come up with a running game. And obviously, we see that we can pass the ball. Clint's become a premier quarterback in this league. However, for us to sustain this type of play in the Big 12, we're going to have to run the football.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think the cool thing is I mean, Clint is doing it.
Yeah.
Kevin White is doing it too, and Mario Alford is doing his best Batman Robin deal. The offensive playmakers are there. The offensive line, they're not going to get a lot of credit. They're doing a great job. I don't know if it's, I mean, you guys tell me, but the running game is something you put in spring and you work through summer camp and you do it.
Right.
You can't really say middle of October, let's run the ball.
Right.
You can't really say that. So what I think of, because we keep talking about those first drives, it's almost like those first drives every single game are scripted. So it's almost like the defense is just completely caught off guard, and then after that it's feel. Whoever has a hot hand, whatever the coverage is, and I don't know if that needs to change or not, but I would like to see more of an emphasis on almost West Virginia. Let's punch them in the face.
Right. Well, it goes back to what Owen Schmidt said. Running the ball is an attitude. And, when you're on defense, and take the Oklahoma game, for instance, when they keep running the ball and pounding at you, that's demoralizing to a defense, and that wears you down. So if we can do that, that would be great for offense, because you get used to an offensive lineman being in a pass set all the time. He's always retreating and pass blocking. And that puts you in an offensive, I'm backing away instead of, hitting a guy in the mouth every play, punching him and, wearing him down like Oklahoma did to us. And I think it's back to what Owen said, it's a mentality and it's an attitude that if you can run the ball against somebody, that, everybody can rally around that.
Offense is putting up over 550 yards a game. I mean, it's hard to pick on things when the offense is doing so well, but when you score in every single quarter through 4 games, I mean that says your offense is clicking early on.
Right. For this point in the season, I mean, it's kind of clear. I think we're doing pretty well, but then we come back to what we haven't spoken about is that defense. We may be giving up just a little bit. In fact, we are giving up too many yards, too many scores on defense. And oftentimes you always hear Coach Dana Hogerson talk about the 3 sides of the ball. All right, and that seems to be where we have more trouble at, on that third side of the ball. Offense seems to be doing well. Defense seems to be coming along slowly, but special team becomes a problem for us, which that third part of the game becomes an issue.
Well, Willie, let's jump into the defense. I mean, I'll start it off. I think the defense. I'm crazy. I think the defense is fine. I think they need to be on the field less. That's why I'm saying run the ball.
Well, when you score quick like we do on big plays and things like that, that's less time for the defense to be off the field. So we get a third down stop, we get off the field, our offense scores in 3 or 4 plays. Now we're back on the field, and you really didn't get the rest that you really needed. So when you run the ball and you're good at it, that gives your defense a chance to get a rest. But with that said, we have to be better against the run. You can't allow, Oklahoma. They gashed us.
Well, we talked about it early on. Those front 3, how important it's going to be for those front 3 to be the Chris Neals, right? And we're not. We haven't seen it yet. Not to say that we won't. I feel like these guys at some point will realize, listen, we got to put pressure on that quarterback and be prepared to fill gaps and take on blockers and be more productive as a defensive front. I mean, that seems to be an area where we just have not seen a breakthrough in terms of one particular player or even a group of players.
Well, we've seen flashes of it. We've seen some guys that, they'll have a tackle for a loss here, tackle for a loss there. But then again, next couple of series, their offense is just running the ball. So, like, again, that demoralizes the defense and that wears you down. Our front 3, you have to play gaps, and then our linebackers can run through and make plays. If our nose guard cannot be a two-gap guy and demand a double team, if that guard can get right to our linebacker, we're in trouble. I mean, you might as well just get ready for our free safety to have 15, 20 tackles a game. With that said, our linebackers are playing great.
Right.
Those guys play downhill, they're making a lot of tackles, but is that part of the defensive front not playing well, or is that the way it's supposed to happen? Those guys eat up blocks and let these guys run and make tackles. So you kind of, in between, well, they are doing their job or are they not doing their job?
I'm going to say they're not doing their job. Anytime you're giving up 200 yards a game on the ground, the front six and sometimes 8 are not doing their job. Like you said, if you look at the past great teams, even in West Virginia, not even West Virginia, great teams historically have always had very low rushing defenses against them. Look at Alabama the past 3 or 4 years. They've given up the least rushing yards in the country, and they've won 3 national titles.
I think that goes back to what kind of defense you're playing also. We're playing a 3-man front. You look at these other teams, they have 4-man fronts, and they're playing a 4-3 or some type of 3-4 that's, you hear more guys that are linebackers. Our Spur and our Bandit, I think we're built to play in the Big 12. And when you play a team like Oklahoma, that although they're in the Big 12, they like to run the ball, and they prove that. So I don't know if there's anything we can do as far as making adjustments, because I never played in a 3-3-5, because you got that Spur and the Bandit. Now they're going to be taking on offensive linemen, and sometimes that can be a tough task, and we saw that again against Oklahoma when those guys pull and they come out and they get on our guys, and they're trying to fight off a guy who weighs almost 200 pounds more than what they weigh. So it's a tough task. But then now I'm going to digress back to our secondary. Our secondary is playing well. Even though we have Daryl Worley out, those guys have been playing well. It's tough because when you can run the ball against us, our secondary doesn't have to do a whole lot but come up and make tackles. So against the pass, they're doing great. They're giving up 200 yards a game, which I think that's pretty good myself. But
that's really well, and I'm going to jump in here too, because the 3-3-5 stack is a misconception defense. It is a downhill defense with your linebackers, but you're trying to throw the offense off of where people are coming from, and we're too stagnant pre-snap. Right. I said this last week, especially against Oklahoma. We had no pre-snap movement. We had no shifting. We had nothing. And when the offense can line up and say, "Yeah, I'm blocking him. I'm going to shed him and go on to the next level," it makes it easy.
And now let's keep in mind that we played 2 of the top 10 teams in the country, right? So exactly, So I do recognize that. I do recognize that we played against top talent, but we're in the Big 12, So we're going to start seeing this type of physical football and continuous. I've heard this phrase being thrown around the Big 12: air raid football. The air raid. Everybody's throwing the ball. But it seems to me everybody got runners and can run the ball. Almost like the old Big Ten. The Big Ten was a conference that you thought about run. Well, the Big 12 is starting to have these big bruising runners who are running the ball downhill, and we're going to have our defense is going to have to play physical and invoke some of that 2010 team and be real physical from here on out.
Well, when you look at the Big 12, they spread you out to run the ball. You only have a couple of teams in the Big 12 that have big bruising running backs like Oklahoma. You might have a few more teams, but like West Virginia used to do back in the day with Pat White, they spread you out and they run the ball. So I think that's what the Big 12 was all about. So if they can spread you out and create natural running lanes, now these guys they don't have to worry about cutting back and things like that. They can just see open lanes and run. They get these guys in space and get the ball to them and let them make plays, like a la Tavon Austin.
And a lot of that is down in distance. If you do well on first and second down, get them into the third and long situations where you make them one-dimensional. It's exponentially increasing to help your defense, knowing if it's going to be a pass or a run.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the special teams. Where do we start with the special teams? I mean, I would call it Achilles heel, but then it's like,
We start with Josh Lambert.
So the toe. We start with the toe.
Start with the toe. He's 7 of 10 this year on field goals. I think his 3 misses are over 35 yards, I believe, as long as 54. 100% on extra points, which you take that for granted sometimes, but I mean those are points on the board. So in all, I think Josh Lambert has done better than average for us so far on the field goal.
Yeah, I keep saying, and I'll continue to say, special teamers for special guys. Guys got to want to be special. You got to want to make a difference. Every play, you cannot give off. You cannot take off one play when it comes to special teams. You got to want to believe that you're a special guy and that there's a purpose for you being on that special team. And I think we'll get there. I think every week, we have these letdowns, but overall, I think 90% of the time, and I'd be comfortable with saying that 90% of the time we're doing the right things. It's that 10% that's causing us the problem.
It's only like any play. If one guy doesn't handle his job, it can mess up the whole thing. So if you have guys running down on kickoff and one guy runs out of his lane, it creates a crease, and now you got a guy flying through there, and running down the field. So you have to have everybody on the same page, like you're saying, JT. 90% you can't have it. You got to have everybody doing what they're supposed to do. Now, for me on the special teams, I'm looking at our punt return. We fumbled the ball a couple times. You can't do that. We fumbled the ball in the red zone against Maryland. We were able to overcome that. And if you look at our punt return team, we only have averaging 6.7 yards a return.
That's not very West Virginia-like.
No, it's not. We've usually been pretty
real.
good having guys that can catch the ball and get upfield and give us good field position. Now our opponents are averaging 24.3 yards a punt return. So it's those numbers are kind of uneven. And I think our punt return team can help our defense out. Because when you come out on the football field and the ball's over the 50, and you, as a corner, when I look behind me and I see the goal line real close to him, I'm thinking, oh man, that's terrible. But if you can have them on their 20 or on their 25 or 30, and you look back and they got a long way to go, that makes you feel better about yourself. You don't hate coming out on the field on a short field as a defensive player.
One thing I feel like this team is recognize their shortcomings. I think that every game that they have challenges in, that they get better and they address it, and they seem to become closer because of it. Because you don't hear anything loosely coming out of that locker room or outside in the community. The guys are handling these wins and losses as a team. You don't hear people complaining about being individualistic in terms of needing the ball. I think this team has the makings of a good team. We just got to continue plugging, especially in the Big 12. We got a lot of big games ahead of us. And it's going to take, as I mentioned early on in the season, for us to have a 12th man every now and again, and having fans sticking around and making sure they're being there and encouraging these guys to be special.
Boom stash.
There you go.
They've had their punt returns being at 24 yards a punt, which means he's actually kicking it further than that. And he's actually at 42 yards on average, long of 58, somewhere around there. I think he's doing well as well. I think we just need to, like you said, get off of your blocks and make a play. It's all about will.
Okay, so I'm going to call you guys out on the carpet right now. We've talked about the offense. We talked about the defense. We talked about the special teams. There's some good things. There's some bad things. This is the point of the season where you either go to the Aaron's Furniture Bowl in like Shreveport, or you go to like the Cotton Bowl or the Peach Bowl or Chick-fil-A Bowl. Where is this team headed right now? Just off of what you see, what you've seen, and where you think that morale is. Start off, Scott.
Morale is high right now. You've played two of the top 5 teams in the country and played them really well. Enough to win, just too many shortcomings to overcome. Going forward here, we've got Kansas, Texas Tech before Baylor. I think these 2 games are crucial. These are the games that you need to win big, get your confidence level up going into Baylor, and then if you win Baylor, then hopefully that sets the season where you can just win out. I mean, these next 2 games to me are where you need to work on the stuff that you messed up for the first half of the season or first third of the season. Right. Correct these items, and then you roll.
Right. I think we're poised to make a great run. Everything's in place. We have a great offense. Like I said, we're averaging 500-600 yards a game. Defensively, we're getting better. We got to get a better push with our defensive line up front. Linebackers are playing fantastic. Special teams need to shore up a few things, but I think we're headed in a great direction, and we're gonna make a lot of noise in the Big 12, and I think we have a chance to play in a top bowl game at the end of the year if our guys can stay focused and continue to correct their mistakes, continue to be coachable, and I think we'll have a pretty good season.
And I definitely echo that. I think early on, when we first started, we talked about some pivotal games, and I thought we saw them all play out the way we kind of thought they would. We talked about Alabama. We talked about it being respectable, and in fact, I'm comfortable to say that it was more than respectable. We talked about having to go into Maryland, and Maryland being a pivotal game, and for us having to win that game and redeem ourselves. We did that. We knew Oklahoma was going to be a tough game, a game that we had circled, and we came out early and we played very strong against Oklahoma. That tells me that we have a strong team. We have a team that will contend in the future. And West Virginians like to go bowling, so hopefully that will work out for us, and we'll have a team that'll be successful, and we'll be somewhere warm in the winter.
I agree with you guys. Somewhere warm. It better be, right? I agree with you guys, and I think at the end of the day, this team is on the rise. Couldn't say that the past 2 seasons, but this team is on the rise, and hopefully this upcoming 4 or 5 game stretch, you don't have to win every game. I'm not saying that like I'm trying to take a loss, but it's about the emotion and the morale and fixing those little things that are holding us back from competing with Oklahoma, Alabama.
Right. We got to learn how to finish. You can't play. You got to play.
Time, yeah.
You got to play 2 halves. When you have we have a pretty young team at some positions, so you got to be able to finish. You can't play a first half and then come out the second half and not add to what you did in the first half. So if they can get that mentality that we played great in the first half, but that's not enough for us. We got to go out in the second half and play better than what we did in the first half. And if those guys can figure that out, they're going to be tough to handle in the Big 12.
2 things that Scott and David said: will and believing. Those are 2 things that will help with the finishing part. And those guys have the will and the belief that they can finish strong and finish some of these games off. We'll start seeing it happen here on Saturdays.
That's why I think the Kansas and Texas Tech game are crucial. Winning's an attitude. Everyone does it differently, but the great teams seem to always put the foot down on the throat and end games how they should. We haven't seen that quite yet. I mean, besides Towson, but I don't really count that one. Maryland, we snuck by. These two games here, Kansas, Texas Tech, are really crucial in getting the morale.
So let's talk about Kansas now. This past Sunday, the Jayhawks fired Coach Charlie Weiss, 6-22 as a Jayhawk coach. I mean, some would say that they knew January 2014 that he wasn't going to last, but they waited until the end of September. It's homecoming week. I mean, is it 75-0, or is it one of those things where there's new blood, there's new fire coming out of the Jayhawks this weekend?
I think it's great for us. This is great timing for us. This is a game we need to have. It's a homecoming game. You always want to win your homecoming game.
Better, right?
Everybody comes back home to see you play. So not having your head coach and have an interim guy, it's tough to get the guys rallied because everybody's wondering what's going on. Who's coming in, because you may have guys that think, well, if I don't like the guys coming in, I may transfer and go somewhere. So there's a lot of things going on within that organization right now. So, and it plays to our benefit. So I'm not saying I'm happy about it, but it helps us. And I think they're going to come to town. They're going to play football, but there's so much going on behind the scenes that I think it's going to affect their play a little bit.
Last year's game against Kansas was the black eye. I think pre-game coaches need to show the film of that game last year and show them this is what can happen if you let down. We do not want a repeat of last season where they basically gave us a black eye and beat our hind ends, right? And I don't know if it was national television, but it put a sour taste in our mouth, and that can happen any day in college football.
Let me share this story. There's a story about a hometown guy or a guy from the community who became an interim head coach who had some kids who didn't know exactly what they were going to do, and he took them in the
Leave
Southeast.
no doubt.
In the Southeast and left no doubt. That's what we have to be very careful of. This guy, Clinton Bowden, is from Lawrence, Kansas. He's a hometown guy. These kids want to come out and play for him, right? We're going to have to make sure we come in this game and remember that we've seen this thing happen before and not fall for that trap and go out there and play football like we know how to play. Do not play down to these guys. Let's go up and have a big game and look at this game as an opportunity for us to get better. That's what we need to focus on and leave no doubt.
Right. Well, we're going to play this game the way we played. We looked at our Maryland game. We remember what Maryland did to us last year, and guys came out and they were ready to play because the proverbial black eye that Maryland gave us last year. So our guys came out and they played hard and they wanted to win that game because of what happened last year. Now, again, Kansas did the same thing to us. So hopefully these guys, remember what happened last year and say, you know what, we got to redeem ourselves. And like Scotty says, you want to come out, put your foot in their throat, and choke them out until you see the eyes roll in the back of their heads.
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate and say that this Clint Bowen, their interim head coach, he's a defensive coordinator. I don't know if you guys have looked at his press conference, but he's been waiting to be a coach. He's ready for this opportunity.
Absolutely.
I don't see a lot of points in this game. I just don't.
Right.
Are the Mountaineers ready to fight? Because this is a team that came into Morgantown last year and stole a victory in plain daylight.
Hey, just to correct you just a little bit, we played them away last year.
Gotcha.
However, this is a team, and that's why I said, listen, we have to be ready to play this game like it's any other game because this team playing with a guy who, like you just mentioned, wants to be a coach. Those kids want to prove something to him. Those kids want to prove to the University of Kansas that this guy could be their next head coach. So again, we're going to have to stay focused and be ready for these guys from the first whistle.
Well, let's be honest. We had the better athletes last year. We have the better athletes this year. I think it comes down to commitment and dedication, knowing your reads and executing. I think this is absolutely a win for the Mountaineers. I just don't see how possible Kansas is going to come home and steal another one from us.
Well, we have to jump on them quick because the longer you let a team like that hang around, then they're going to start getting their little mojo and they might start putting up a fight like JT said. So if we jump on them quick and score a couple of touchdowns in the first quarter and first half, now, like I said, with so much going on, they may just hopefully lay down and, like I said, we can just roll to a homecoming victory.
So what are our predictions for the game? Start us off, JT.
West Virginia by 2.
By 2?
2 touchdowns.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll side with you on that one, JT. I think we're going to win by 2 touchdowns, maybe even more, depending on how our defense plays, and I think they're going to play well. 2 touchdowns or more.
I think this is our next statement game. I think this is where we roll into the Big 12 saying, we're here. I mean, we played Oklahoma tough. We're not going to let that happen again. I'm going 42-14.
Well, I'm going 24-17 Mountaineers. I think this is going to be a tough game. This is going to be a tough game. And one of the things that I've seen week in, week out, the Mountaineers right now are struggling with similar athletes on their level. They're struggling. I'm not saying they're not better than them. I'm just saying the youth experience, they don't know how to finish and close them out. So this is going to be a closer game. I hope it's not, but I see this being a closer game than what we're hoping for. But it's still going to be a Mountaineer victory.
We have an off week to prepare. Our guys are healthy. I think there's no way that we don't roll.
Our guys are ready to get back on the field. I mean, these guys, after playing a game like they played against Oklahoma, when they knew where the letdowns were, you can just imagine being in those meeting rooms after that game.
And you can tell because they didn't give up even in the fourth quarter. They marched right down there and scored a touchdown to get it, within, what was it, 10 or 12 or whatever our last score was. Yeah. I mean, they marched right down the field and put it in the end zone.
Right.
So our guys are ready to come out.
So does this has to be a blowout in your guys' opinion? This has to be a definitive stomp.
A definitive game. This has to be a definitive game for them.
The thing about college football is a win, whether it's by 1 point or whether it's by 65 points. After now, well, I can say that now because we have 2 losses because we're not going to be in the top 4 teams. But a win is a win now.
But you know what, for me, Scott, being a defensive guy, I want to win with a statement, right? I want to win with, at some point, West Virginia got to have an attitude where we're going to win with a statement, and I don't care who it's against. Do it together. That's the type of attitude that I'm used to seeing Mountaineers walk around with, and I expect no less. I expect for us to always go out there and be prepared to win with a statement, and not to gloat about it, but just to say, hey, we're the Mountaineers. We're going to come play football.
Right. And we've always played with a chip on our shoulders because, most times people look at West Virginia, they're a good football program, but they're not that next level program. So our kids are going to have to go out and play with with a chip on their shoulder, and like you said, JT, make a statement and let the rest of the Big 12 know we're a team that you're going to have to contend with, in the rest of the season because we've got a great offense, we have a defense that run around and punch in the mouth, and and our special teams are continually getting better. So you guys got to get ready for us.
Well, the stage is set for homecoming against Kansas. Check out thedpost.com for more updates.